You have made it to a place where we are close to the end. Welcome back to Chapter 15. I'm Octavia Harris, and this is the negotiations. You have finally received a receipt of a promise to purchase. The receipt of promise to purchase is an important part of this process. You have just received your promise to purchase from an interested buyer. Great! Now, what do you do? It's a good question. The obligation to buy is, in fact, an actual and legal document that binds two parties. It is also called a buy-sell agreement. This must be drafted carefully since the omission of a single point can become problematic. This document is written by the buyer, who will then send it to you or your broker. When you receive a promise to purchase, you will have a specific time to accept or refuse. But above all, let's see what it contains. The content of this promise to purchase. The promise to purchase must contain a wealth of information. This must mention the following points and include a whole lot more. Please go over these documents carefully. It includes your name, the name of the buyer, and the address of the property, the purchase price offered, the amount of the deposit, the elements that the buyer wishes to include in the purchase, the closing date, the date to which the buyer wants to take possession of the property, a request for a certificate of location of the property, the expiration date of the purchase offer, any other condition. For example, to satisfy the buyer for following the inspection or following the approval of financing. There could be multiple other conditions that are required and need to be looked at and read thoroughly and understood. The content of this promise to purchase must be carefully checked since most of the information to be included is mandatory information. When you have been given a promise to purchase, you will have to decide to accept, refuse, or even make a counteroffer. Most sellers do not systematically refuse the offers they receive, but instead sends a counteroffer to the buyer to demonstrate that you can have an interest in them, but you still may refuse his present offer. This will take the next step that you need, which will be negotiations. Counter proposals, counter negotiations. Have you received a promise to purchase and you start to find that the price offered by the buyer is too low? You can then make a counter proposal and start a negotiation process. The sending of a counter proposal has the effect of signaling your refusal and concerning the promise just presented. This means that this is a notice of denial accompanied by a counter proposal that you would find acceptable and that the buyer should consider. Elements of the negotiation. This counter proposal may be related to the sale price, inclusions, or even the date of taking possession. It can also make a modification or a clarification on the offer presented simply. Each counter proposal has the effect of canceling the previous one. Make sure that during your negotiations, your modifications are cumulative, and you do not forget anything from one counter proposal to another if you happen to have several counter proposals on the table. The counter proposal must include the conditions of acceptance. which stipulate the time allowed for the approval and the notification to the seller. During the specified counterproposal, the seller cannot withdraw his offer under any conditions. Once deposited, it can no longer be removed. Finally, you and your buyer will negotiate and agree on the terms of the sale. You will then have signed a promise to purchase according to the new conditions established, and when this is done, you will proceed to the next step, which is a transfer of ownership.